Tug-of-War, retold by S.E. Schlosser. Now, my cousin, P.S. Wooden, is a successful businessman, and he's got a pretty solid head on his shoulders. But when he told me that he owned a haunted house, I told him that he was plumb crazy. It was a nice red brick house, about a half a mile above the bridge, and it sat right in front of an old Indian burial ground. Wooden had rented out the house more than once, but no one ever stayed there for long. I'm telling you, the tenants all claim the house is haunted, Wooden told me. I'm not making it up. I think maybe it has something to do with that old Indian burial ground in the back. I think it has something to do with the quality of the people you rent the house to, I snapped. Honestly, Wooden, I might believe there are rats in the floorboards, or even squirrels in the attic. But ghosts? Why don't you stay there a few nights, suggested Wooden. Check the place out. I won't charge you any rent. Charge me rent, I snapped. You should pay me for dispelling the rumors. A haunted house. I packed a bag that very night and moved into the house. It was a large house and quite comfortable. I put my things away and spent a quiet evening reading a book before I went to bed. I fell asleep almost immediately, was dreaming happily about food when the covers were snatched right off my bed. I woke up at once, blinking blurrily in the darkened room. Good gravy, what a draught, I mumbled, sliding to the floor and picking up the covers. I staggered back to bed with my covers and went back to sleep. I had the top quilt clutched in my hand, the corner tucked under my chin. Suddenly, the quilt was ripped out of my grasp so fiercely that it yanked me halfway down the bed. I snapped awake again. You cut that out, I shouted to the irritating draft. Honestly, can't a man get some sleep around here? I fetched my covers, tucked them firmly in around me, and went back to sleep. The next morning, I carefully examined my room, trying to find the annoying draft that had kept blowing my covers off the night before. The room was well constructed, and there didn't seem to be any gaps around the windows or the door. Still, I decided I was overlooking something, since I knew for a fact that there was no such thing as a ghost. I went to work that day, and forgot all about my interrupted sleep as I immersed myself in the various tasks that crossed my desk. It wasn't until I finished a late supper and went up to my room that I recalled the incident with the blankets. Ghosts. Balderdash and poppycock, I growled, quoting some of the favorite Victorian sayings of the character in the book I was reading. I settled back against the pillows and read for an hour before turning off the light. As I made myself comfortable, the door to the room blew open with an eerie creak. For a moment, I had the strange impression that someone had come into the room. What nonsense, I said aloud, and turned over on my side. A moment later, the covers were snatched right off my body. Hey! I shouted, sitting bolt upright. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the quilts from the floor. I am going to have to get that draft fixed in the morning, I defiantly told the darkness, climbing back into my bed and tucking the covers firmly about me. I kept the top quilt clutched in both hands and lay waiting for the strange draft to strike again. Nothing happened. Nonsense, I muttered, turning over and letting go of the top quilt. I was nearly asleep when the covers were whipped aside, leaving me completely bare. I do not believe in ghosts, I shouted, climbing out of bed and grabbing the quilts. I returned to the bed and slept with the covers firmly wrapped around my arms for the rest of the night. I found it much harder to keep my attention on work the next day. My sleep had been restless, to say the least, since I kept expecting my blankets to be blown off by that strange draft. When I finished work that night, I stopped by the house of a friend who was a carpenter. My buddy cheerfully accompanied me to the house and examined the room for drafts. "Nothing here," he told me after giving the room a thorough going-over. "It must be your imagination." I snorted expressively and escorted him out the front door rather more rapidly than necessary. I hated being laughed at. When I went back to bed that night, I tucked each and every corner under the mattress before I got in. Then I lay still, gripping the quilts tightly with both hands. I was unsurprised when the door blew open with an alarming creak, and an invisible presence entered the room. I turned slightly, making the springs of the bed squeak, and started to snore. A few moments later, I felt a hard tug on the covers. I tugged back, equally as hard. That did it. The covers were yanked away so fast I was half lifted off the bed. "Oh, no, you don't!" I shouted, pulling back so fiercely that the muscles in my arms corded with the strain. I was making progress. The covers advanced slowly toward me, and I rolled myself down onto the bed and pulled the quilts back up to my chin. Suddenly, the blankets were whipped backwards so fast I landed face down on the foot of the bed. The quilts fell with a triumphant thump to the floor. A moment later, the door blew shut with a bang. "I still don't believe in ghosts," I muttered grumpily, rolling off the bed to retrieve my covers. The next night I went into the bedroom with a hammer and several nails, and nailed the bedroom door shut. "I'd like to see a draft get through that," I said, punctuating each word with a strike of my hammer. Was it my imagination, or did the air suddenly get chilly? I shivered. "Rubbish!" I exclaimed, trying to rid myself of the notion that I had angered something, or someone. I felt certain that I would have an undisturbed sleep. Nothing was coming through that door tonight. I drifted off peacefully and was deep in dreamland when the bedroom door crashed open and the covers were snatched off my body so hard they left marks on my bare legs. "Cut that out!" I yelled, jumping to my feet and grabbing the covers from the floor. Immediately the covers were yanked from my arms. I managed to grab the end of one of the blankets and pulled back, really angry now. Back and forth, the invisible presence and I wrestled, knocking into furniture, rolling right across the bed, neither of us giving an inch. Finally, I let go of the blanket so suddenly that it snapped backward, and I heard a distinct thump, as if something, or someone, had fallen to the floor. "Get out!" I shouted at it. I must have won that round in our little game of tug-of-war, because the door slammed shut with a rather sulky sound, like a spoiled child denied a toy. "Good night and good riddance," I exclaimed, reclaiming my covers and climbing into bed. I examined the door in the morning and couldn't find a single nail left in place. I couldn't even find the holes where I had driven the nails into the wood the night before. That creeped me out something awful, but in for a penny, in for a pound, as the saying goes. I was committed to my course, and nothing was going to keep me from making that house.
Watermelons, retold by S.E. Schlosser. Well now, old Sam Gibb, he didn't believe in ghosts, not one bit. Everyone in town knew the old log cabin back in the woods was haunted, but Sam Gibb just laughed whenever folks talked about it. Finally, the blacksmith dared Sam Gibb to spend the night in the haunted log cabin. If he stayed there until dawn, the blacksmith would buy him a whole cartload of watermelons. Sam was delighted. Watermelon was Sam's absolute favorite fruit. He accepted the dare at once, packed some matches in his pipe, and went right over to the log cabin to spend the night. Sam went into the old log cabin, started a fire, lit his pipe, and settled into a rickety old chair with yesterday's newspaper. As he was reading, he heard a creaking sound. Looking up, he saw that a gnarled little creature with glowing red eyes had taken the seat beside him. It had a long, forked tail, 2 horns on its head, claws at the ends of its hands, and sharp teeth that poked right through its large lips. "There ain't nobody here tonight except you and me," the creature said to old Sam Gibb. It had a voice like the hiss of flames. Sam's heart nearly stopped with fright. He leapt to his feet. "There ain't going to be nobody here but you in a minute," Sam Gibb told the gnarled creature. He leapt straight for the nearest exit, which happened to be the window, and hightailed it down the lane lickety-split. He ran so fast he overtook 2 rabbits being chased by a coyote. But it wasn't long before he heard the pounding of little hooves, and the gnarled creature with the red eyes caught up with him. "You're making pretty good speed for an old man," said the creature to old Sam Gibb. "Oh, I can run much faster than this," Sam Gibb told it. He took off like a bolt of lightning, leaving the gnarled creature in the dust. As he ran past the smithy, the blacksmith came flying out of the forge to see what was wrong. "Never mind about them watermelons," Sam Gibb shouted to the blacksmith without breaking his stride. Old Sam Gibb ran all the way home and hid under his bed for the rest of the night. After that, he was a firm believer in ghosts and spooks, and he refused to go anywhere near the old cabin in the woods.